Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. We can go ahead and get started. My first ask, if everyone could please mute their mics unless they are speaking, that would be wonderful. Um, we'll go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, and everybody can see my screen right now? Yes? Okay, lovely. So, hi. Oh, yes, there was a hand raised.
No, that was an accident. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. So I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Winnie. I am the data manager slash GIS specialist for the Network to Freedom. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to start off just by introducing the regional managers, and then we can go around, and the rest of the NTF staff, and then we can go around the applicants and say hello. So let me forward. So to start off, we have Kamel McLaren, who's the acting national manager. Kamel, if you want to wave and say hello, you're more than welcome to. Um,
Good afternoon, everybody.
then we have Robin Krawitz. So Kamel also is in charge of the Northeast region. You can see in this map, he's the purple states. We have Robin Krawitz, who is also in the Northeast region. You'll see her sometime in the end, and she'll say hello. We have Barry Jurgensen for the Midwest, Dan Ott, who's the Pacific West and Intermountain region, and Sherry Jackson, who's not with us today, is at the Southeast region. We also have Venus Amadi, who is our grants facilitator. She's online, and Rudy Biategi, who is our VIS detail. So I'd like to thank them all for coming, as well as welcome the applicants. If you could please say your name and the state that you're from or your current applications to, that'd be great.
Okay, I go first. My name is Don Patton, and I'm from Cairo, Illinois, and representing the Cairo Historical Preservation Project.
Nice to meet you, Don. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.
You can go next. I'm Liz Campbell. I'm in Lewiston, New York, which is the far western part of New York State. And our First Presbyterian Church, Lewiston, is going to be submitting the application.
Nice to see you, Liz.
Hi, Winnie. Hi, Robin.
I can follow. Hello, my name is Valerie Boutron. I live in Crete, Illinois. I'm an independent education consultant, and I will be submitting an application on behalf of the school district, Crete Moni, School District 201U.
Nice to meet you, Valerie.
May
I
I
could go next. Oh,
Oh.
go ahead, Frank.
Hi, I'm Frank Gerard Godlewski, and I am an architect and a historian from Montclair, New Jersey. I actually live in Essex Fells, New Jersey, in a house designed by Edward Bowser Jr. If you'd like to look, Google that under Forgotten Genius of Edward Bowser Jr. My house is about to become a landmark, a state and national, for the excellence of the architect, Edward Bowser, who's among, well, maybe the first African-American architect to design a house in New Jersey. And he was flunked twice because there were no Black architects in New Jersey in the 40s. And he worked for Le Corbusier in Paris and did the Unità d'Abitazione in Marseille. So that has nothing to do with my Underground Railroad. I have been researching, because I'm an architect, I focused my research on physical built remains of structures that could have been used as hiding places, safe houses, tunnels, and I've identified 11 sites in Montclair.
That's great. Nice to meet you, Frank. Congratulations on your house, too.
Thank you. Congratulations for the house, really. It's the architect. He's great.
Should I go next? I don't know how to get my picture up there. But it's Carolyn Smarts Frost. I am an architect. Sorry, I'm not an architect. I'm an archaeologist, historian. Yeah, sorry, historian, and and I'm a writer. I'm working with I'm the Canadian contingent actually of the binational project at the Cataract House Hotel in Niagara Falls, New York, which was an entirely Black run underground railroad station that lasted more than 20 years without being stopped. It's a wonderful story, and we've been working on it for many years. It's also an archaeological excavation, and we're now applying for Network to Freedom status for the site.
That's exciting, Carolyn. Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Roseanne Bachagarza. I am on the border, the US-Mexico border here in Deep South Texas, working on trying to get the Jackson Ranch Church on the Network to Freedom with regard to travel southward through Texas and into Mexico, freedom seekers traveling through this region. I'm from New Jersey. I lived in Montclair for the beginning of my adult life, as working in New York City for 16 years in my former life. So I'm very interested in what Frank has to say. It reminds me of home. So good luck with all of your research. That sounds fascinating. I lived on North Mountain Avenue for about 10 years.
Oh, wow. I was born in Montclair, but spent most of my adult life in Italy. Came home, and there's just so much to study in Montclair, so many structures, there's so many staterooms.
Yep.
Like at Applegate Farms.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful town. Beautiful.
I can go next. My name is Jeffrey, and I am a museum educator for the St. Louis County Park and Rec, and we are submitting a nomination for the Daniel Biffle House because we had several freedom seekers run away specifically from that site. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Kinch. I'm filling in today. I'm from Burdenham, Pennsylvania, and we're working on a application for a Lampeter Meeting House, which is adjacent to Daniel Gibbons' farm, and he was quite active with mentioned by William Still in his journal and so forth. And I'm just following up for a group of people in Lancaster, PA.
It looks like we have a few people left. Does anybody else want to introduce ourselves before we get started?
I'm Emily Palmer. I'm a park ranger out of Jacksonville, Florida's Timucuan Ecological and Historic Preserve, which includes Kingsley Plantation. Happy to be here.
Nice to meet you, Emily.
We're also Sherry's home office, so I feel like we got to throw out some love for Sherry.
Hi, my name is Toya Wilson, and I'm from Southern Illinois, Carroll, and I'm working with Don Patton in the Historical Preservation Project.
Nice to meet you, Toya. Thank you for joining.
Hello, I'm William Bozick. I'm at San Antonio Missions National Historical Park in San Antonio, Texas. I'm the lead for an attempt to get Mission San Jose approved as a Network to Freedom site.
Very cool.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you, William.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's everyone. So if that's it, I'll get started. Mr. William, could you please mute yourself, please? We hear some wrestling. Thank you. Okay. So share screen. So let's go back. So this presentation is really simple. I'm just going to go over the basics and then really spend a lot of the time having question and answers from the applicants about the process and any specific questions to the application. So as we all know, starting with this year, we are requiring their final applications be submitted through this new system. The questions have not changed. They're still the same questions that we had in our old form. It's just in a new format. And so this presentation, it will really just go through how to create an account, two-step verification, what the dashboard looks like, how to create it, some of the elements that follow the existing form, how to upload supplementary documents, and then just some suggestions for success. So some tips before creating an account. We found that the best web browsers to use is Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome. It's also helpful to have the email inbox that you've used to create your account open in another tab so you can find the second verification code easy. Only one person can create or edit an application, so that's something to keep in mind. Also really good to save more times than you think you need to because we don't have an autosave feature. And finally, this system is still new, so there's going to be glitches. It doesn't work perfectly every time, as we've seen with the past 2 rounds. So you're frustrated and we're frustrated is what I'm trying to say. So first we'll go into how to create an account. The URL is listed above, and I'm happy to put it in the chat after. But when you open this, you'll see this homepage where it'll say Network to Freedom. You'll have a sign in part, and then there'll be a little link that says create an account. So if we want to create an account, we would press that button. And then these are the questions you would have. So your first name, email, password, and it's good to write it down. And the password is something that you can remember. And it's really easy to reset it too if you forget it. The address line, this won't be shared with anybody, it's internally, but it's good. The address should be the one that you want if you do get accepted in the network, that we can send your official acceptance letter and certificate to. So you would fill this out, select that you're not a robot, and then submit. And then after that, you'll get an email that says, would you like to confirm your account? So you would press yes. And then to sign in, you'd go back and you would see this sign in page. You'll put in the email that you used to create your account along with your password. And then we would go to the next step, which is the two-step verification. So all government systems have a two-step verification system to ensure not only your security and safety, but also the systems. So after you correctly put in your username and password, you'll have a screen that looks like this, and an email is from cr@nps.gov is the sender, and you'd have a security code. So this security code lasts 5 minutes from the time that you get it in the email to when it expires, but you can generate as many as you need if you're busy. But you can copy or paste or type it in and then press submit, and you're in the system. It's not super hard, but if you have any trouble, I'm happy to help. So after you log in, your dashboard will be blank. You won't have all these different applications, but because I was making tests for this, we had a couple. But so to create your application, you would click this blue button that says new application. And after that, you would see this create new application page. And this has different sections. So the first section is general information, which is the element name of your site, facility, or program, their address, city, state, zip code, all those, if you have a website, phone number, all of those kinds of things. The one thing I also want to point out too is up at the right-hand corner, you'll see this little timer logged out in X minutes. Each login session is 30 minutes, mostly to protect your security and that if we had it open for longer, who knows? But if there's a way to extend your period. So at the 2-minute mark of you working on this, you'll have a little pop-up that says, do you want to continue and extend your session? If you say yes, then you'll get another 30 minutes. If you say no, you just want to make sure you save before it logs you out, because like I said, there's no auto feature. So whatever you've put in between your savings, if you forgot to save, unfortunately you've lost it and I can't get it back. So that's why I say save as many times as you need to. And you also see these buttons, save and submit. The difference between those, save is when you're still working on the application, you want to save it and you're still checking it. Submit is kind of after you've looked at everything and you feel really ready to send it on for the next process. But we can get more into that later. So this general information is just the very basic things about your site, facility, or program. You also have these questions. Is the resource open to the public? If you press yes, you'll have these other questions about days and times. So the important thing about this is you can check as many days as you need. And let's say you're open Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from 8 to 12 p.m. You can put that in. And then to save it, you'll press add time. And then like if you have different hours on Tuesday, Thursday, you can add that and make as many adjustments as you need to. So if you say yes, you'll have this question in addition to it. And then the next one is the summary, which is the 200-word abstract that we also put on our online map for people that are interested in your site, facility, or program. So it's really important that this summarizes everything you've researched in terms of freedom-seeking names, where the proposed listing is, and why it's significant to the specific Underground Railroad history. And that, it does have a 200-word abstract, that part is limited in word count, but the rest of the application is not. So after you've gone through general information, you'll have the second part of the application, which is called type of nomination. And we have 3 types: site, facility, and program. If you want definitions of what those are, I can also put that link of how we define it in the chat. But the great thing about this online application is whatever you pick, so if you pick a site, it will filter all the questions based on site, which is really helpful. So you don't get confused and you don't have to answer other questions for other things. It makes it really simple. So these are the types of questions that we ask for site, such as the type, is it listed in the National Register of Historic Places? If so, you can add an ID number, the ownership of site, and also Underground Railroad associations. You can click as many as you need. And there's also this big question called describe a site's association and significance to the Underground Railroad, which is a red star. And this box is where we would typically enter our S4 information, or the connection to the Underground Railroad in the old form. So this will hold everything that you want it to. You can type as much as you want, but the caveat is that you can only enter text and endnotes, no images here. So images are something separate that we'll talk about in a little bit. And also these are different questions for a facility. This is just kind of a screenshot so you get an idea of what questions we have. For program, we have described the program, what do you want your audience to know about the Underground Railroad from this program? How is it presented? These kinds of things. And then after that, you'll have the owner or manager / application preparer section. And this is where you can have as many owner managers or application preparers, or they can be both. You can check either. Have as many of these as you need. But the important thing is that after you add your name and email and other things, you press the blue add button. Because the blue add button will say that you've saved your information. If you don't press it, it won't save your information. So that's kind of key. And then the last part we have is about uploading letters of consent, photos, maps. Maps are really used for the sites to kind of gain an understanding of where the site is in context to the rest of the landscape. Letters of consent are PDFs usually, and this is where you can have as many uploads as you need. And the types of files that we include PNGs, JPEGs, docs, PDFs, and others. But this is where you can upload those. So does anybody have any questions about just what you've seen before I go into helpful tips and tricks?
Yes.
Mhm.
I have attempted to save items,
Okay.
and the website gives me a 403 error, consent
Okay.
not given, and it won't let me save.
Okay. I can definitely look into that. Is that like a recent, like in the past couple days, things you've tried?
Not the past couple days, but
Okay.
past couple weeks.
Okay. We can definitely touch base if you want to put your email in the chat. I can reach out to you directly if that works for you.
Excellent. Will do.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. You check the chat, see if there are any other questions.
I had a quick question. If
Yeah.
I have a lot of, so I have a lot of photos of the exhibits that we currently have. I have
Mhm.
historic photos. Would it be better for me to combine those all into a single PDF with captions and credits than to upload them individually?
So that's a really good question. It really depends on your preference. I know some people, and Barry has advised the Midwest to do this, which is really helpful, of having like a table of contents of what all your attachments is. So you could, have a single PDF that has a historic section with all your historic photos, and then your current exhibit photos, you could have that, and then, whatever you name that PDF in your table of contents, little Word document, or there's a part here where it says comments optional. You could put a note in that, photos HS, is the document that has historic and current exhibit photos. Like you could write a note to the regional manager that is. But yeah, I mean, I would, if you want to put it in one PDF, you can. The one thing I will advise though is like current photos that you want to use for our social media shout out or for a press release, so that is its own specific upload, so that way we can download it easier. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Okay, perfect. Good. Any other questions?
I have one, Winnie.
Yeah.
I have a lot of photos of documents, and
Okay.
if I include those, they may not be easy to read.
Okay.
So it was suggested to me that I transcribe any documents or anything where there's words, that I should transcribe those and also then include the photos.
Okay.
And I don't know if you had any other suggestion.
So you can definitely do it that way, Liz. The other thing is, if you have access to the document still, there's a great free app called Genius Scan that I can send you more about. But essentially, you can put your camera over that document and it'll get a high quality scan there that you can email to yourself or save as a PDF or JPEG. So that's another option too. If you want to have a high quality, easy scan of it, it just takes your camera does all the work for you. We can talk about that if that's something you're interested in.
Well, a lot of them I've taken pictures of them and I no longer have access to them.
Okay.
Without,
Okay.
without, doubling my time.
Right, definitely. So yeah,
Okay.
if that's the case, Liz, then yeah, we can look into transcribing them and maybe putting them on a Word document where we see the photo and then, you know, the words that and the parts that you really want to emphasize, we can talk about transcribing and highlighting those.
Okay, I'd probably have to talk to you offline about the
Yeah.
technicalities of that rather than take up time for everyone else.
Definitely. Yeah, and that was the other thing I was going to say is
Okay.
I'm happy to if you're having specific struggles or want a little more time going through application, I'm happy to schedule one-on-ones to help out with any technical assistance with this. So,
Thank you.
Definitely. Any other questions?
Can you put your contact information into the chat?
I'd be happy to. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. I can do that. Actually, I'll do that now before I forget. So let me. So I guess I'll do a few tips and tricks, and then if anybody else has any further questions or other things, we can go into that. The last bit I was going to say about this online application is there's a Privacy Act that you can really read through, but essentially, in order for you to save and make sure you save successfully, sometimes you'll get an error that says, you know, you haven't agreed to the Privacy Act. So trying to make a point of whenever you save, either at the top or at the bottom of the page, to make sure you click yes to the Privacy Act. That was the last thing. So a few suggestions for success. Work with your regional manager to review application drafts before submitting through the system. This helps, you know, making sure you're getting the right contact and really distilling down, you know, why it's important and how your research shows that. Before working in the system, it's helpful to answer the questions in a Word processor or Word document. So not only can you cut and paste them into the online form, but also if you're working with a group of people, you guys can comment on what you guys have written, and it's a lot easier to communicate and work on the same work that way. Obviously, save as you go, that the session lasts 30 minutes. Use EndNotes for citations. That's an important thing. We're still working out the kinks of citations, and EndNotes has been the best of it. And that submit is the very last step for a completed application. So once an application preparer presses that, they won't have access to edit their document anymore. But if you accidentally hit it before you're ready, you can let your regional manager know and they can send it back to you to continue the work. And then one thing that we found, if you have super large PDFs like a thesis or really like, there's no limit on what you can upload, but sometimes if you have like a thesis or something that has a lot of storage, it might not always go through. So you can consider either saving a portion that directly deals with your proposed site facility or program and put that bit into your uploads, or you could just send the whole file to your regional manager or myself to include for review material. Again, if you're struggling with the application, please feel free to reach out and to me. I'm happy to help. Sometimes, as Bob Nelson, who's on the call, will tell you, if you want to include your Word document as a supplement, if your text that you're copying, pasting doesn't always work, sometimes it may not come out the way you want to, but if you've written that Word document, you can have it the way you intended the reviewers to see it. And then if you're having specific issues, we can talk and we can try to put together a description of the problem, type of browser you use, and any steps that you use to resolve it. This kind of format's really helpful for me when I'm going back to our coders and say, hey, you know, a lot of people are getting this issue. These are the steps we used. Can you help me figure out this bug? Yeah. Roseanne, I thought you have a question.
Yes, real quick. In the very beginning, you were going through, I think the initial setup, and there was a
Mhm.
submit button to
Yes,
push.
yes.
So we push that one. And then we continue on, and then we will not see a submit button until the very end.
So you'll see a submit, and I can go back. So when you have your verify code, you'll have a submit button, which is saying I'm getting into the system.
Right.
And then once you create your new application,
This
this
one.
submit button means like, hey, I've looked over everything. I think I'm finished with my application. So it is confusing because there's a submit button when you say verify code and also a submit button when you create the application. But those are the differences.
Okay, so I can push submit on this one to
So
create.
yeah. So you can press submit on the verify code, which will allow you into the system. But once you're writing your application, and if you press submit,
Okay,
then that means I'm done with my application. I want the regional manager to look
right.
at it.
So not this one, just keep pushing save until the very, very end.
Right, until you feel like you're ready.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Clarifying question, Winnie. Once you submit, you can't get it back until someone on the National Park Service side unlocks it and sends it back to you. So you're kind of
Well, so the editing rights are locked. You can still view
You can
the
see it, but you
applicant
can't-
preparer can still view the application that they've submitted. But if they like, let's say that they see that they've had Joe Smo as a owner manager when they really wanted them to be an applicant preparer, or let's say they somehow totally forgot their consent letter or need to update their consent letter, then they would reach out to Dan or Robin and say, hey, I need to update this. Can you, send it back to me so I can edit it again?
Yeah,
Okay.
which we're happy to do. It just might be a day or something. We'll probably actually get to it within the hour, but it can take sometimes a little bit longer.
Definitely.
Winnie,
Yeah,
I have one more question before I need to hop off.
definitely.
I have used Firefox forever on my Windows 10 computer.
Mhm.
Do I really need to use Google Chrome or Edge?
I say let's try it out, Liz. I mean, we've
Okay.
had a few people use Firefox and it be okay. I
Okay.
just know that the coders test out their bugs and fix them in Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. That's not to say you
okay.
can't use it.
Okay.
So if that works for you, we can try it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
May I say something?
Yeah.
I tried to work in Firefox, and it was like a mess. It kept messing up, and then Robin had suggested, my regional manager suggested I use the Google, and it's perfect using Google. I just wanted to share that.
Well, that's super helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had one question.
Yeah.
The application preparer asked me if they're uncertain if the application was submitted. Would just check with Robin, for example?
Yeah, usually, and this is the other thing that I'm glad you brought this up. So once you create an account, you'll get an email that says, hey, you've created an account, you'd like to confirm. When you submit your application, you and us and the National Park Service side will get an email that says, Joe Schmo has submitted their application. We can view it, so we can double check. I know a few people have submitted theirs early, some people that haven't talked to their regional managers and things. So we can definitely double check on that.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then they'll also, I guess the other thing that's important too is whenever like the regional manager like Robin or Dan make comments and send it to you, you'll also get an email of like, hey, so-and-so made comments or so-and-so, would like to set up a meeting. So you'll get that communication through email too.
I would add just to what Winnie was saying is like, it's really good to be in communication with your regional manager prior to submitting stuff in the database, which I know both Roseanne and William, my two folks from Texas, have been doing. It's just way easier to make changes and add comments to a Word document than it is within the digital submission platform. And so that's usually what we recommend is best practices, like get the narrative together and we'll go back and forth editing that before you start tangling with the submission platform. Because as people have noted, and Winnie has pointed out, like it's something new, we're trying to make it better. It does have a number of points of frustration for everyone involved. And the only way we get through them is for us to get really good, as Woody was saying, really detailed descriptions of what's happening and submitting those to our coding developers so that they can fix it and stuff like that. But it just makes it easier if the history is done first before the IT war. Thank you so much.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Can we ask logistical administrative questions now, or are we still addressing technical questions?
Whatever questions you have, Frank, we're happy to hear them.
Oh, okay. And I love the use of Joe Schmo instead of John Doe. It's so much more updated. Because I have 11 different subject sites that I, sort of am trying to document as much as I can, and they're just really fragments and some narrative, like local narrative from Montclair in my lifetime. I've had, some of the owners don't want to, didn't want to sign off because they said they don't want the attention, they don't want tourists, they don't want buses. And then there's an organization that recently purchased one of the sites and they don't want me to be part of their, what they're doing. But the site actually the part of the site with the tunnel doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to a private school that I'm an alumni of, Montclair Academy. So they're really trying their best with their attorney as we're speaking to figure out if there are liabilities for them as a private institution for site visits. They have site management issues, which is totally understandable. I do that too as an architect. The sign off, they want to sign off, but they're just worried about implications. Are there any public present requirements with the sites?
So I will say this, Frank, and I'll let the regional coordinators expand on this, but we do have a number of sites that would like to remain private. And so when I showed you the site one, if there's open to a public or address for publication, there's a little check mark that they can say no in. And if they decide no, even if what that means is if they do get into the network and they don't want to be shown on our interactive map, but still want to be a member and not have the tourist buses, they have that right to privacy and they can. So they can still be a network member, but be not have their address shown so that people won't visit them. But I'll let the regional managers expand on that too. We have sites like that though.
Oh, you do? Okay, good. Thank you.
I'll just jump in really quick on that. The consent letter as well should clarify that. So if the manager or owner of the property endorses the listing of the property to the Network to Freedom, they can do so, but then they can also say they do not want to share their address, just as another layer of notification for us to make sure that we limit, we won't share that address at all. So,
Let me-
and you can talk to your regional manager about that, the wording in the consent letter.
May I kindly ask you if, for example, we're talking about traces, like in my case, like of physical structures and narrative. I'm wondering if, like, how can you make a reference to like 1870, and say that this trace is from there, but, not really disclose the location? A lot of them, if you go there, it's already been buried in the last 50 years that I've seen them. How can they be on the program and not listed, like their location? Is it possible?
It's kind of a curiosity, Frank, right? Like you want to get your place designated, but you don't want anyone to know. Like it raises the question as to like, what's the point of the exercise at that point, I suppose. But I think you're sort of getting to that as like, what does it mean? It becomes a document that we have. It's a document that we're not going to, if we were to share with people, we would redact. So you'd still get the narrative. If people wanted that narrative, we could still have the historical narrative to share, but there wouldn't be, you just wouldn't know where it was other than probably the county and the state.
I see.
Does that jive with what everyone else, Barry, Kamel, Robin, does that sound right?
That's correct.
I'm the new guy here, so I'm double checking with my colleagues who know things more than I do.
May I also just say, I think that if, like, I suggested that this private school speak with the regional manager to answer their questions. Is that possible? Like, are your regional managers of the program willing to do that?
Yes, everybody's on board. So if you want to set up a meeting with the regional manager in your region or particular region where your verifiable location is, you just contact that regional manager and they'll set up a meeting and answer all questions that you might have about consent, about the history, about the application process.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
And since we're on the topic of consent, that is probably one of the most important aspects of the actual application, is because if you don't have that consent letter, you do all that work in terms of writing that master narrative, and then once it gets to the review committee, that's the first thing everybody sort of checks off on. So
Right.
you definitely want to get that consent letter even before you sort of go dive all the way in to the narrative or the process itself. Yeah, make sure you have confirmation that the owners of the site or location are on board. But as Dan and Winnie made clear, that they can opt out and say, hey, I don't want to check the box that I don't want to be known, or I want it to be private. But in essence, you still got to go through the process of submitting a consent letter. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like land use, land use laws, I guess.
Oh, also, this probably doesn't apply to anybody on the meeting today or open house. Is the other aspect is reaching out to your regional manager and starting that correspondence and communication all the way through the process, because we're probably in the process of actually trying to come up with on the interface of even if you don't even your application won't even go forward if you haven't even reached out to the regional manager. So that's been a problem. It's not a major problem, but it's we do get a couple of applications that sort of slip through the cracks of they submit them at the at the wee hours of the deadline, but they hadn't even submitted themselves through the process of even reaching out to the actual regional manager. That's really important as well. So.
Kamel, just really quick, I dropped 2 examples that I always share for I do consent to share my address, and then one that has the wording that I don't consent to share my mailing address. Both still support the nomination. It's just that the second paragraph in the letter is different. And then Kamel, could you verify they could either address those letters of consent to the regional manager or to you or
Either
you want
or,
it
yeah,
to be
either
the
or.
regional manager? Okay.
Yeah, all the above. As long as the regional manager. I mean, it would make more sense of doing it to your, basically addressing that letter to your regional manager because you've been working with that individual and you establish that rapport. It's just a matter of just acknowledgement. So either way, whatever's comfortable for the applicant, but I would say I would lean more towards addressing it to the regional manager. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up a point here really quick. I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did, Winnie. But after Prepare submits the application through the online portal, by the July 15th deadline, we will still have a couple more weeks after that to kind of make some changes. So just be mindful of that we may return it with comments with a couple more things, but if we can fix some of the errors or some of the different things missing on our end, we will do that. But we'll still have a couple more weeks after that January 15th submission deadline to do some final corrections.
Definitely, Barry. Thanks for reminding us of that.
Did you say January 15th or July 15th?
January. That's the upcoming deadline is January 15th.
Okay.
And then we'll have another one in July 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, you missed one, there's another. And then one
Okay.
after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then just so everybody knows, I think, and Kamel, you could jump into to verify, but I believe it'll be a process to, we have to meet and review all of the submitted applications, and we plan on doing that in the spring, but we likely won't announce new listings until late March, early April. Can't really be for certain on when we will announce that, but it'll be in the spring.
Definitely, Barry. And I know one thing we also try to do is, especially with the January round, also let them know about our grant rounds that come up in June and July, if they're interested.
May I ask a question since we're all here? Can you describe what the scenario or the expectations are for the public? Like if, let's say, the site that I'm proposing or the 11 sites become part of the program, and you have sort of like this road going through the town with safe houses and underground structures. Like what would you like to do with them? Would you like the public to, like, who organizes the public's visits? Is it the Parks Department? Will there be buses? Is it just sort of online? Is it private for institutions to make appointments for a tour? Like what kind of scenario do you envision?
So in my experience, essentially it's a designation program, which you would never know that something was listed unless the property owner did something, right? So they have to consent to get it listed in the first place. And then there's a historical documentation in which our program approves it. But that actually doesn't do that much of anything, right? The property owner would have to then do something else, right? They would have to get together with maybe a local heritage tourism group to set up a tour route or develop an online digital presence or do something like that. The program itself is sort of putting the stamp of federal significance. Like, this is important to understanding African American resistance to slavery through escape and flight history. This is important to our country. What people do with it on the ground is pretty wide open. We have lots of examples of just a ton of different things, right? And so it comes down to the local stakeholders who wind up making those decisions. And we provide grants to support local stakeholders doing things with their sites. We put out, last year, we put out $500,000 in grants through our partnership with ASALH, which is the Association for the Study of African American History and Life. But it really is, on the ground, who's doing what and who's making that decision to sort of take the national program, the federal, that the National Park Service administers, and try and stand that up as a local or online digital interpretive presence in whatever way.
Oh,
So
that's very useful. Your explanation was perfect. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. So you have then, like, let's say, it's like my house designation. Like, I'm just designated, means really nothing beyond that. It's just,
I mean, it depends on what the program, if your house is designated in the National Register, there's not anything that the public would know. The federal government and the state government know, so that they can't just like bulldoze your house without taking your house into consideration as part of a really complex process. But yeah, it's not something where it's like blinking signs and carnival.
right.
Unless that's what you choose to do yourself.
No, I was told by the DP that even if somebody wanted, see, I'm afraid of selling my house because I know it would be demolished tomorrow if I sold it. Like, it just doesn't matter, the history. Not in the real estate market that I live in. They'll buy a $3 million house and tear it right down. So, and then they'll build a, much bigger one. So it's interesting to know that you're not going to come to us and say, okay, we have a program that we're going to start implementing with your site. More or less, I'm understanding that you're saying that it's up to us. Once we have the designation, we take that ball and run with it any way that we feel is the most appropriate. And that could be grants,
And Winnie brings up a really good point in the chat here, which is our team of regional, our team at the Park Service is happy to help think through and, think through a project idea, provide technical advisory support for that idea, try and bring support resources to bear in terms of professional expertise, historical, architectural, whatever, into supporting the work. But the work that's going to be done is going to be stood up and led by the local stakeholder.
I see. Now,
So I think it sounds like you're headed in the right direction in terms of how you're thinking about our program.
well, thank you. But one thing I can ask you while we're talking about it, for example, I have 11 sites. Some of them may just be that, it's a beautiful, like 20-room house, and underneath it is a tunnel where there were beds and, like bottles and cots and things like that. So what I'm saying is, like, do you have a team that we will be working with that can further the research, or it's all up to us? Like, we have to find it with an academic institution like university, or do you have a team?
All the above.
Oh, you do have a team. So let's say, somebody could evaluate my findings and say, you're out of it, it's your imagination, or they can say, this is brilliant, it corresponds to other information that we have, and blah, blah, blah. So you do have a team. And so is it regional?
That's essentially the application process. So we're the team that comes together and review your application to make sure that everything is verifiable and it's directly connected to the Underground Railroad. And then circling back to what Dan was saying once, if I'm just, sort of just for the sake of conversation, I'm just saying, giving you a thumbs up or thumbs down of it coming into the network. Once you make your way into the network, that same team is here to actually provide you with technical support to, sort of flesh out your next steps, right? Because that's one of the benefits of becoming part of the network is to continue to lean on and have that quote unquote technical support by that regional manager, or if all the regional managers are connected to your story or connected to that site, then we'll come to you as a team and say, hey, maybe you might want to apply for a grant to begin identifying these sites through quote unquote markers. Then you apply for that grant. If the actual site is a structure that's in that needs preservation, or structurally not sound, then you can apply for that grant. So it continues to build off of each other. Just getting into the network is the first step of a long, genuine, sort of collaborative process to get your site visible and recognized. But then, like you're saying, some applicants don't want those sites to be amplified, known to the public. But that's a direction we will take. But for the most part, it looks like you're really trying to get at sort of rightly preserving these sites as well as amplifying the notoriety of them. So yeah.
Well, it's also a matter of identifying them, just identifying them into some kind of documentation, because I don't want to die, I don't want to leave this earth with all the information that I've been, provided in my lifetime by important people who have thought and worked really hard. I've seen things just like this just all wind up in a dumpster once somebody passes away, and I don't want all this information to wind up in a dumpster when I pass away.
Well, you're on the right track in terms of starting the application process.
Thank you so much.
So that will be sort of the core to your documentation. And as Dan say, the stamp of federal approval that this is a site of significance, or these are sites of significance.
Thank you.
Speaking of stamps, Kamel, once a site or a program or a facility is listed, you could also, if you request it from us, reach out to your regional manager, you can actually get an NTF passport stamp that you can stamp your NPS passports if you have one, and you can be a part of that passport program as well, just so everybody knows that.
Is there some type of plaque that goes along with this designation as well?
We'll get a.
I think we usually do this is a failed prototype sign, I believe is what we call this at this point. But yeah, more or less, you will wind up getting a stick. We do a sign. This is a metal one.
Yep.
And then
initially,
so no, go ahead.
Once you're into the network, you'll initially get a welcome packet, and you will get a certified certificate. So that's the first form of recognition, and then we are, as Dan was saying, we are working on sort of being able to provide those form of plaques to our members.
It's a great concrete example of when you get the designation that you can garner more local support and resources. In the community that I live in, another organization, the Local Historical Society, when they received their designation for a site in the community I live in, they were able to get donations where they had their certificate blown up into this big, huge, beautiful placard that they now have on display. But I feel like that's a concrete example of when people, see, when you do the work, when people see that you do the work and it manifests itself in the designation, it has a tendency to get other people who were kind of, on the fence, or let's see what's going to do. It kind of helps to galvanize support and resources around it. So and Barry, don't kill me, because it seems like I can never have a conversation without bringing in a running metaphor. I don't know if anyone else on this call is a runner, but I really view this whole process as with a marathon mindset. This is not a sprint. I'm an endurance runner, and I view this whole journey and this whole process I'm engaged in very much as a distance running event. All right, I'm sorry, Barry. Forgive me. Like,
No, Valerie, you're a good example too of amplifying these stories and getting this designation for like your program for your curriculum. It's going to help or could help other states and other educators in your example. So it's really a big deal. And then for sites, it'll help you connect with other sites because these stories are very much stories of different journeys that cross regions. And so Robin and I have been working a lot with different families from like Lancaster, Pennsylvania that moved to Ohio that were involved in the Underground Railroad, and then that helps us connect the dots and maybe descendants. I mean, it really just blows up with how many connections in the network that we provide to all of our members that are listed. So very good point, Valerie. And I love the running metaphor. I really do.
I know we're over on our time, so if anybody wants to stay further and has any further questions, you're welcome to. But I want to thank everyone for coming. And if you have any questions, I have my email in the chat. Thank you. So looking forward to reading your work.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
everybody.
much.
Thank
Thank
you. Nice to meet you all.